Hi everyone, welcome back to another on-tap Quark tutorial. Rebecca here again, and in this video I'm going to show you how to fully design an article. I'm going to cover the basics for any on-tap design so you can apply everything covered in this video to any article you design. So let's get started. I'm going to open Quark and your dialog box will open again, and I'm going to just create a project. New project dialog box opens. I'm going to leave everything on default, 8.5 by 11, half-inch margins, one column. Click OK. So now I have my first page. Most of our designs are 2 pages, so I'm going to go ahead and add a second page by coming over to the page layout box, right-clicking my page icon, click Insert Page. Right now I'm just going to insert one. Then I'm going to click and drag the second one up to beside the first one so that I have both of them side by side. I'm going to Control 0 to fit everything on the screen so I can see it as I'm designing. Now, before you start throwing text into Quark, go ahead and open it up in Word. And I wanted to show you a few things that I've done before I put this into Quark. So you'll see I have some bolded sentences and phrases. Before sitting down to design an article, make sure that you read through it. Then underline, bold, highlight, however you want to denote a few short segments that you especially like. These can be parts that really speak to what the article is about, or that are really descriptive, or that are just really well written. These sections are what you'll want to use for pull-out quotes. If you think about the last magazine story you read or saw, you'll probably remember a big chunk of quote that had been pulled out from the text and set apart. That quote was probably the first thing you read, and it may have been what interested you in reading the whole article. So that's the point of the pull-out quote. It should catch the reader's attention and make them want to read the article. So before I start designing, I always choose possible pull-out quotes. So I'm going to go back into Quark, and I'm going to go ahead and make a text box for my title. I always use my guides, so I drag my box from one side all the way to the other. We already have a half-inch margin, so we don't need to save any extra space by shortening the box any. You can go ahead and pull it from one guide all the way to the other. And notice they kind of lock in there. Sometimes the article's author will title his or her own work, but this one did not. It's just called geocaching. I could use that as the title, but I like titles to be catchy and a little descriptive. So instead of just geocaching, I'm going to title this Locating the Facts on Geocaching. It's still short, but now the title is a little bit more informative. ONTAP has a style book that mandates the font for the title to be Verdana. So I'm going to Control A to select all of my text and go into the measurements box at the bottom and just start typing Verdana, and it'll pop up. I'm also going to make the text big. Right now, I'm not exactly worried with how big, just big enough that I can see what I want to do with it. So I'm just going to pop it up, just that's a little too big. So I'm going to put it at 48 for right now. That looks pretty okay. And now I'm just going to play around with the title until I think it looks eye-catching and interesting. A lot of times I'll actually have 2 text boxes for a title. I think I'm going to do that in this one. So I'm going to Control X to cut geocaching out of the first title box. I'm going to make a new box and Control V to get it in there. And then I think I'm going to have geocaching stand out a little bit. So I'm going to bold it and actually make it a little larger. I'll put it on the other side. And now since these are in 2 different boxes, I can kind of get them closer. Okay, not too close. I don't want them to overlap. Those G's are kind of fighting one another. Okay. Now there is a keyboard shortcut that can get rid of all of these guides on here. So if you hit F7, I hit F9. If you hit F7, then that will go away and you can see what everything looks like without the guides. I like how this looks, but I kind of want these to go ahead and line up a little bit. So So I'm going to go ahead and push that over. And that's looking better to me. So I'm going to F7 to bring those back on. And just to get this so that it's more centered, I'm going to go ahead and center this actually, and then move my geocaching back over. Okay, I'm going to F7 just to check that out. Looks pretty alright. I think I'll move it over a little bit more. Maybe move it down actually. Okay, I like how that looks. So F7 to bring my guides back. So at this point, I want to bring up the front page picture. Again, if you think about the last magazine article you saw, the first page probably had a huge picture which caught your eye and possibly made you want to read the article. For every article, I make a folder of possible pictures, and I have that open here. As you can see, the author was kind enough to take several. When you take photos for an article, expect that maybe 1 in 6 at most will be usable. Take plenty of shots from plenty of angles so the designer has a good amount of choice. I always look through all of my options and find 4 or 5 that I might want to use in an article. So in this case, I found 4, and I've saved them so that they would be at the top. A design might only use 1 or 2, but you always want to be sure that there are plenty of options. So I'm going to import this photo. So back into Quark, I'm going to go onto the Picture Content tool. And again, I'm just going to draw a big box from one guide to the other. I'm going to right click and import. And let's see. I think I want this one for my cover. So notice frame is much bigger, well, it's different proportions than the picture. My picture is a little wider than my frame, but my frame is a little longer than my picture. So most of this picture is kind of empty space here. So I'm going to go ahead and actually hold down Shift and pull at the corner until this fills the box. If I right click and scale picture to box, remember it's going to fit it in there the best it can. So it's not going to stretch the picture to fill the box, it's going to fit the entire picture into the box. Alright, so I'm going to have to shift and stretch. Okay, and I can click away and then it'll just show me what's in the frame, and I think I like how that looks for now. Got a nice big picture, and I can F7 to get rid of all of the guides. Got a nice big picture and a good kind of flashy looking title. The only thing about my picture is that it kind of falls flat on the page. So I'm going to put a border around it. So I've got my crosshair, I've clicked onto the box, can come down to measurements, and the second tab here is your frame. So I'm just going to put a 2-point frame on there. And then that just kind of defines it a little bit. Where it gets really light, you can see exactly where the picture is separated from the paper. I'm going to F7 to get my guides back on there. Now that I feel pretty comfortable with my title and my front page picture, I'm going to start bringing in the actual article text. I'm going to double click on the blue part here to collapse the measurements bar. I'm going to add a text box onto the bottom. So then I'm just going to copy and paste all of my article out of Word. So Control A to select, Control C to copy, go back over to Quark, Control V to paste. And of course, there's this little X at the bottom showing me that I still have a lot of text. So I'm going to go ahead and create a second text box and link them so that my text will automatically go from the first to the second. So click and hold on the text box tool, go over to the linking tool, click the first box, click the second box. And we can see that I still actually have a little bit more text, but we can deal with that after we figure out what the front page is going to look like. Then we'll worry with the second page. Alright, And actually, before I fully edit the first page, I want to make sure that my text meets the ONTAP standards. So I've double clicked so that I'm on the text content tool. I'm going to Control A to select all my text, open my measurements bar back out, and ONTAP's body font is Georgia, and then it'll be 12 or 14. So I'm going to leave it at 12 for right now, and I'm going to go ahead and hit my leading up 3 times. And remember, that just gives that little bit of extra space between the lines so that there's a little bit more white space for your eyes to rest on. At this point, I'm going to Control 1 to get to actual size so that I can kind of see what this first page looks like. There are a few things that you can do with the text on the first page. You could drop cap. So if you go back into measurements bar and you go into the paragraph tab, you can just drop cap. And so that's interesting. And I also like the font on the first page to be a little bigger. The main thing is that I know this is going to have to break somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and read it really quickly and figure out where I would want it to break. I actually just like it right here after the first couple of sentences. So I'm going to break that a little bit. I'm going to undrop cap that. And now this is much more manageable for me to kind of figure out. So I want my front page to have a larger font. So I'm going to make it pretty big. And my drop cap did not change size. And then also, we're going to have to up the leading a little bit more. To make sure that I do actually have 3-point difference in there, I like to type in auto so that it's correct, like it's just the bare minimum. And then I'll go ahead and move it up 3 more points. I don't really like how this 4th line hangs under the drop cap, so I'm actually going to take that off. So instead, I think I will just bold this entire first sentence. So I'm going to go back to the Classic tab on the measurements bar and bold it. And I might even make it a little bit bigger. And up the leading just a couple. I'm going to go ahead and push the rest of that text out of this box. Okay, so I'm going to Control 0 to see how this whole thing looks. And it looks all right. I can move my picture down a little bit. Okay, I'm going to F7 so that I can see what it looks like without all of the guides, and I like it. I think that it looks fine. We've got a big popping title and first page picture, and then the text isn't overwhelming on the first page, so I like this. One thing I would like to see is a little bit more color so far. So the only color that that's really popping out at me for this design is this green here in the label. So if you come over to your colors, notice we don't have a green. So I'm just going to hit this plus sign, and I'm going to try to make a green color. I'm going to drag up here into the green. And if you're good with Photoshop, you can go into Photoshop and use your eyedropper tool to get the exact number for a color. And if you do that, drop down and use the HSB numbers. That's what's going to translate best. The eyeball method doesn't always make the color the most exact, but this is close enough for me. Alright, so maybe now I want to change my geocaching to this new color. So I'm going to make sure that I'm editing my text and click New Color. And then maybe even this first sentence, just to give it a little bit more of a difference. All right, so I'm going to turn my guides back on, and now that I feel good about this first page, I can go to work on my second page. So since I pushed this text down, there's an extra space up here between these paragraphs. I'm just going to delete that out. I want to put 3 columns into this text. So I'm going to open my measurements box back up and just click up 3. Notice when you change columns in a text box, it only affects the text box that's selected. It doesn't affect all of the text. Okay, let's see how much we have. I'm going to stretch this text box out as much as I can. And notice I still have some text here, so I'm going to have a third page. So I'm going to insert a new page, scroll down, and I'm going to go ahead and add another text box. And then I'm going to link the second box to the third one. Notice again that this box has columns, this box doesn't. So I'm going to also change my columns for this box. Now that this one is selected, let's get the text, there we go. Just going to move up 3. Okay. All right, so at this point, I'm just going to work on the second page now. And I've got this big picture and a big title. So on my second page, I don't want to have another picture yet. Instead, I'm going to do a pull-out quote. So I'm going to go back into my Word document, and I'm going to find one of these bolded quotes that I really like. I think I'm going to go with this longer one because I kind of have a lot of space to fill up. So copy to that, and I'm going to create a new text box. And right now I'm just creating it so that I can still grab it. Before I do anything else, after pasting my quote into there, I'm going to go ahead and put a runaround on this. So in my measurements box, my 4th tab, I'm going to go to runaround, click item, and notice immediately everything moved away from the box. I'm also going to change all of these to 5 point so that it gives it a little bit more, you see there's a little bit more of a space so that it's not touching the box. So now I can bring this into the text. I'm going to go ahead and make it 2 columns wide. All right. So Control A to select all of it. Back to the Classics bar. Our style book says that pull-out quotes should be either a variation on the title font, so Verdana, and you can change it to bold or italics or whatever other style you like. Or it can be Candara. Those are the 2 fonts that we can use for pull-out quotes. So I'm going to make this one Candara, and like the title, I want my pull-out quote to be big because it's the thing that I want people to see and say, hey, that looks like an interesting quote. I wonder what the rest of this article is about. All right, I don't like how we have just one word here, so I'm going to try to move that until it goes away. And so since I did that, now I'm going to have to change my font size. But I still want it to fill up the box. I feel pretty good about that. I'm going to go to my text tab, and I'm going to center this in the box vertically so that now there's an equal amount of space on the top and the bottom. Then back on Classic, I'm also going to go ahead and center this horizontally. Even though this was in the middle of the sentence, I'm going to make that a capital T. And I think this would all look better if it were bolded. Okay, when I'm in a pull-out quote, I don't really like it when my words wrap around. So of course that's going to mess up my entire quote, but I can easily just change the font size down. Okay, so I like that, like how that looks. And I also want this to be my green color. All right, I'm going to F7 so that we can see this. I'm going to move this out of the way. And so far, I think this looks pretty good. We've got plenty of white space and a little bit of color. So I like how this looks so far. So F7 to get my guides back. I'm going to scroll down and see what I've got going on my third page. This actually looks really perfect. There's enough room for me to put my text anywhere on here, and I have room for another picture. So I'm going to draw a box, and it doesn't matter where the picture goes. You could put it at the top or at the bottom. I've just decided to put it at the top. Okay, I like this first one. It shows everything that's in there. And I'm going to hold Shift and move it in so that I can get the whole picture. Actually, I can move this out a little bit on the other side. And again, I'm going to put a frame around it, a 2-point frame. F7 to remove the guides, and this looks pretty good. I like how all of this looks. I've got some color in here, I've got a big pull-out quote, I've got a couple of pictures. Everything's looking good. So then the last thing I'm going to do is add my author's name at the end. So I'm going to Control 1 so that we can get down here. And the way that we do that is go to Webdings, the number 4, and then just go back to Georgia and write the author's name. Then I'm going to select all of this and make it 10-point font, and I'm going to make the author's name italics. So this little symbol, our Webdings 4, is what shows us that that's the end of an article, and then we put the author's name at the bottom instead of having bylines. All right, so that is your first ONTAP article. So then I'll just File and Save. I'm going to call it geocaching. Click Save, and I'm done.